Hello and welcome to a deeper dive with Dara Cam. That is me. And today we have a little bit of a different show for you. We have a mashup of folks who are going to let us know what's going on in the aftermath of Hurricane Idalia, which made landfall in the Big Bend area, the Big Bend region of the state, near Keaton Beach in Taylor County on August 30th. We're going to talk to someone from one of the power companies that supplies power to one of the hardest hit areas. We're going to talk to State Representative Allison Tant, who represents two of the counties that were hit. We're going to speak with a county commissioner from Levy County who represents, whose county was also hard hit. Cedar Key, remember Jim Cantori? Did you see him in Cedar Key? That's Levy County. And we're going to talk to an emergency management director from Columbia County, just to give us a little insight into what the challenges might be for rural counties trying to clean up after a disaster. So stick with us, you don't want to miss it. Hurricane Idalia special guest. Our first guest this morning is Columbia County Emergency Management Director Shayne Morgan. Welcome, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Dara. It's nice of you to have me on this morning.
And you all weren't really, you did not have any major impact from Idalia, did you?
Well, I wouldn't say we didn't have major impact. A lot of ours was limited to vegetative debris. The estimates right now are between 25,000 and 30,000 cubic yards of vegetative debris by the time the cleanup is over. Fortunately, we didn't have any major structural damage. We didn't have any loss of life or anything like that. Several days, folks in the county went without power because of power lines being down and those type of things. But all in all, with the shift that it made west, which was very unfortunate for the Taylors, the Dixies, the Swannies, the Hamiltons, Jeffersons, Madisons, that kept us from being as heavily impacted as those counties are and what they're facing right now with the recovery and the cleanup that's going on.
With all that debris, I know I have friends who represent Bay County and live in Bay County. Post Michael, they had a lot of debris after Hurricane Michael 5 years ago. In fact, we're going to do a special episode commemorating the 5 years that passed since that hurricane coming up. But what is there concern about wildfire, about fire hazard? I know this is kind of gross, but when you have a lot of debris, it attracts rodents and critters and things like that. So what happens to all that debris?
I'm not sure what the end result will be. I've heard talk about possible burning it at the landfill sites that are approved for that, but it will be taken to specially designated landfill sites that are out there and be disposed of properly that way, whether it's by burning or some other means.
What's your biggest challenge in a rural, small community of, I believe, is Columbia one of the fiscally constrained counties?
We are.
Right.
We're growing, so we're one of the larger, smaller counties, if you will. We're getting close, just over a population of over 70,000 for Columbia County. We've grown quite a bit over the last decade, especially. So one of the big challenges in any rural county is personnel, having enough manpower to do the jobs that you need. So in the emergency management field, we're very fortunate that other emergency managers from around our area will go and be a part of the recovery effort once it's safe to get to whatever location they're at. And so it also, for the public works crews, the public works crews in these counties, they aren't very heavy with the amount of people that you would need for these. So finding contractors, having a pre-event contract with contractors is a very big part of being able to do that, because that's your force multiplier. That helps you get additional people in to get the job done.
Then you have the problem of where do you put people?
Yes,
Where do they
that's right.
stay?
And quite honestly, I got word from our Red Cross partners yesterday that some in Suwannee County were being transitioned out of a shelter and put into hotels over here in my county, because there's a lack of hotel infrastructure in Suwannee County. So they reached out, got a hold of a couple of our hotels, and that's where some of those folks will be staying. So
What's the county seat in Columbia County?
Lake City.
Lake City. So my uncle, that I'm the guardian of my uncle, and he lives in an assisted living facility for veterans in Lake City, and
Is he in the VA domiciliary?
he lives in Jenkins.
Oh, and
Yeah.
Jenkins. That's Veterans Domiciliary.
Yeah, so he was calling me, and I was in a panic, huddled in my basement. I say basement, but my downstairs, and he was anxious about what was going to happen, because at one point it looked like Lake City was going to really take a hit, right?
Oh yeah, for most of Monday and Tuesday and into early winter, or yeah, most of Monday and Tuesday, we were gonna have it come right over the top of us as a strong Cat 1, low Cat 2, which would have caused quite a bit of damage if it had done that. So it's one of those type of situations where you hate to see anybody get impacted, but because of the shift that storms often have, we were able to lessen those impacts.
So when you are building up to a storm like this, there is a lot of variation. People sometimes in a small community, small growing, although growing, you're still relatively small. Do you have a problem getting people to evacuate from, say, mobile homes or homes that are old that maybe might not be hurricane safe? Is that a problem? Maybe you didn't need to do that this time, but is that a growing problem?
Well, first and foremost, I need to say that we're in Columbia County, we don't normally issue mandatory evacuations. So we don't really have the issue of them having to get out per se that way. But what we do is we word it that if you feel unsafe in your home for any reason, find somewhere to go, whether it's a neighbor, it might be a family member, a friend, somebody that you know from church, or it might be a shelter that we have open that they can get to and be able to take refuge there if they're feeling unsafe in their home. With that said, yes, it is a challenge, because a lot of people are afraid that if something happens to their home, they won't be there to protect their stuff from looters, or just being able to put it back together after the storm has come through. So that's a very big concern. And depending on the situation, you know, they might have animals that aren't taken in pet-friendly shelters and not want to leave them, so they stay at home. There's a lot of varying reasons why people make the choice to stay in their home. First and foremost, is their familiarity and comfort. It's where they are comfortable at. And, you know, to a certain degree, I can see that, even though we do wish they would heed the warnings and get refuge someplace more secure.
You know, you're, I'm sure, in contact with what's going on in the neighboring counties. As you said, you've got folks coming in from, that are helping out in some of the harder hit counties. I guess maybe there might be a possibility you might get a little financial boost out of, you hate to say it, but, there might be a little boon from the people going to hotels and eating at restaurants and whatnot. But you're in contact with some of your colleagues in other counties. What are you hearing from them? What are they telling you? We didn't want to bother them while they're trying to, wipe up and get people homed and sheltered and get power on. But what are you hearing?
I'll be honest, a lot of mine is coming third hand because of the same reasons. Knowing what they're going through, dealing with. It might be via a simple text message or just, hey, how you doing? We're hanging in there. So I'm not hearing directly from them at this point, just because they have so much going on. But, we do try to reach out and let them know that we're thinking about them and those type of things. But just the damage and devastation that's happened from Taylor County, Dixie County on up. It's just been unreal to fathom what this storm has done and how that recovery effort goes on.
It doesn't seem to me like it's been getting the kind of media coverage now in the aftermath that we did see with a Hurricane Ian or Hurricane Michael, and I wonder if that's because these are harder to get to places. They don't have big airports coming in and out of them, or I just wonder why that is. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to do the podcast, is to highlight that there are serious needs. I was just on the phone with Representative Allison Tant, who represents Madison and Jefferson counties, and she was saying that they really need chainsaw chains, and chainsaw oil over there. So there are, that's a very basic need, just so that people can get to where the recovery needs to take place.
Absolutely. That's one of those things that, those are the things that you don't think about in a disaster like this, because of so much debris, so many trees down, so many large limbs down, falling on people's houses and such, that the wraparound, the ancillary parts of the chainsaw, of the tractors that are having to move the equipment, you got to make sure you have a way to get that if you need to replace it during its use.
So how long have you lived in Columbia County?
I'm a lifelong resident of Columbia County.
Do you think that a storm of this magnitude in the neighboring areas is going to have, what kind of long-lasting impact do you think it'll have?
I hope it helps people see that despite us being inland and being used to being inland counties for so long, that I hope it helps people realize that, hey, we can be impacted. These are the situations why we tell people, be prepared for 3 days after the storm hits, because you never know how long your power is going to be out. Power restoration just is based on how long it takes based off the damage that has been caused by the storm as it's come through. So there's a lot of varying principles, and I hope people continue to take heed of the message that we put out whenever it's non-hurricane season. When we're doing our presentations, talking about have at least 3 days supply of water, food for your family and for your pets, because you don't know how long
and prescriptions, medications.
Have cash on hand. We have become such a digital currency society that a lot of people use their phones to make payments, when in reality, you may only have the option of paying cash depending on what damage is done to the place you're going.
That was one thing I was wondering about. I haven't heard any reports about. Did you have any cell phone interruptions? Did any of your towers go down or in neighboring areas? Because I covered Katrina in Biloxi, and they had nothing. They had no power, no sewage, no cell phone communications, and it for quite a while. So I was wondering if that's been an impact inland.
Not for us so much.
That's great.
We went for several hours one of the days. I don't remember if it was Wednesday or third. I think it was Wednesday. There were several hours because of the outages, electric-wise. Restaurants may have been able to do some stuff on backup power or whatever, but they may not have had access to their credit card.
Mm-hmm.
So cash was the only one to pay. But I'm not familiar in this event with us having any major cell phone issues. Here at the office, we had a little, we had a hiccup at the county offices with our internet provider, and we were offline for several hours at least. And so that caused an issue with us being able to send email traffic and everything, but we were still able to send out via cell phone and text and those type of methods.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule, and I'm glad that everybody's safe there in Columbia County.
Thank you, Darryl. I appreciate you having me on today.
we're back with State Representative Allison Tant, who has been very active in recovery efforts in the region, in the Big Bend region, following Hurricane Idalia making landfall in Taylor County on August 30th. The hurricane made landfall in Taylor County and then did massive damage in inland counties that are included in your state district. Representative Tant, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, I think.
I know you've been in Madison County. That's one of your counties. I know Jefferson County also got hit really hard. Can you tell me what you're seeing on the ground right there?
The biggest problem in Madison County is the trees. And it's not because, the trees are, we all love our trees. These trees are years old. So they are enormous trees. They're giant. And getting them moved takes heavy equipment. Getting them cut to movable sizes takes more than just your average chainsaw. So it's a really big job. And the Madison County's never had a wind event ever. And so this is their first time experiencing this, and the devastation is widespread.
What's it like there? People, I was speaking with the Tri-County Electric Cooperative folks today, and they told me that there's about 3,000 of their 20,000, I guess they call them units, 3,000 that have not been restored yet. And that's because it's either too dangerous, they can't get to them. There's reasons why they can't turn them on. They're trying to get it all restored by Friday as we're recording this during the week.
Right. That's correct. The biggest challenge really is the trees. You can't get to the wires until you get the trees off of the wires, and that's got to be done safely. So that's the issue. And so that has been the challenge from the beginning. I spoke with Tri-County like the day after the storm about all of this, and they were first of all, the transformer was blown at one point, and then so they had to rebuild that, and then obviously getting the trees off the wires was the single biggest challenge. So, and getting them off without damage and without harm to the linemen, without harm and damage to people's property. So it's been a real challenge just because of the size and frankly the number of trees. So it's been a real issue, and it is pretty devastating. The trees, I saw a trunk of a tree on a house that was probably the size of my car, the width. So it was really huge, and I'm really glad that the owner was not in that home, because I don't know how they would have survived it. So
it's amazing. I just saw FDLE issued a medical examiner's report from the hurricane, and it said there were 2 deaths. I think one was in Alachua County. I believe that was a car accident, and another one in Brevard County. And so we haven't got any reported deaths from the immediate
that's
areas.
a miracle. That's really a miracle.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes, it is. It is really a miracle. And I know I have seen homes and I've seen cars that have been flattened or mostly flattened by trees. And it's astonishing that human beings were not killed in that storm. And I think it's because of there's so much land space and a lower population level. There's about 18,000 people who are, per the census count, live in Madison. We actually think it's a little higher than that. We think it was undercounted because, of course, it was COVID and we couldn't go door to door for census count. So we think it's really more between 20 and 21,000 people who live in Madison, and the average income in Madison is about $28,000 or so. So it's a very economically challenged area as well. And you've seen people do some really remarkable, generous, heroic things for one another. It has been a true testament to the best part of us when we step up for each other when times are tough.
That's interesting that you said the average household income is $28,000 a year. I mean, that is not a lot of money.
No.
What are you thinking? You're familiar with this area. You represent them. what are you concerned about people's ability to rebuild?
To bounce back. I no, I will tell you why. Of course, it's going to be difficult. I'm not going to say it's going to be a walk in the park by any stretch, but I will say that the resilience of North Floridians, we've bounced back before. After Michael, these people will bounce back. I have no qualms about that at all. And of course, my job is to get as many resources to them to help them bounce back. So that's what I've been dedicating pretty much every waking moment to since the storm hit. I've been in Madison every day since the storm, and I've been in Jefferson every day since the storm with these counties. And so and I will say that it's a testament to the hardworking people in Tri-County that we're going to get power restored as quickly as this, because it was not looking like it was going to be that fast initially.
Can I ask you, and I really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us, and I will wrap it up real quickly. What is the biggest need over there right now? If people want to help, don't send us your old torn blankets and your
Right. No, no,
used
no.
up shoes.
Right.
What do they need?
Land clearing. They need so the first order of business for people was, number one, was to get the highways, like the major highways like Highway 90 and I-10, open back up for travel. That was the biggest thing, is that we couldn't even get support systems in place until the road was cleared, and it was not easy to do. And then the next thing was to help clear people's driveways, because there were trees down blocking driveways. In fact, my aide, who lives in Madison County, could not get out of her driveway for several days. And so that was the second thing. Now it is getting debris to the sides of the road where it can be picked up. And those are the trees that are on roadways so people can drive safely on the road. So that is our biggest need. The second thing we're doing right now is working to get people cleaning supplies, because they're going back into their homes, they're going back into the schools. School's supposed to start tomorrow, and there's going to be some cleanup. When there's when you lose power for that long, when it's that hot, it gets moldy, it gets gross. We didn't have water damage up in Madison, unlike Taylor and unlike Swanee, but we did have, we've been out with we've got 30% of the population who's still got to get power. So 30% of the Tri-County folks who need to get power. So there's still people without power, and their homes have been, basically collecting something they can't see at night, in their homes that they don't have. So we got flashlights over there initially, but we're doing some second harvest. We've been working with second harvest on food distribution. So food items, cleaning items, baby formula, diapers. Those are the kind of critical needs we have right now over there.
And it's hot.
It's very hot, very hot. That was the first thing we did, was set up cooling stations. And I will say this much, that the Sheriff David Harper, is an incredibly good, what I've seen in this situation, and like some of our bigger counties, is it's really the job of the sheriff to kind of lead the charge and take this on. And we've never had anything like this over there. So we're all, and I'm part of it, learning. I've weathered storms and helped with hurricanes here in Tallahassee as a layperson, but now as an elected official, there's a whole nother layer of stuff to learn. He's doing an amazing job. The man has integrity. He's honest. When he gives his word, he's going to follow up on it. He's a really fine public servant, and he's done a really good job with this, with the EOC over in Madison, which, by the way, is extremely small. There's about maybe 4 people who are there. So unlike the Leon EOC, for example, that's hugely staffed, this is a very small operation. Same with Jefferson. These small rural counties are very very, very small operations.
Sure.
And these folks have done really some really heavy lifting. And in fact, I was talking to one of the EOC directors today in Madison, and she still doesn't have power, as she's working to get everybody else situated.
Yeah.
So, I know I'd be a bear if I didn't have a good night's sleep. So
it's bad.
My hat's off to her. My hat is off to her. So, and we've had meal distributions. My aide, who lives in Madison, she actually took some leftovers, warmed them back up, and then served 100 linemen yesterday, one by one down the road in Madison. And that's the kind of people we're talking about here. So it's just a really great community.
What do you think that the legislature, do you think that there is anything that the legislature can do or will need to do to help out? I know a lot of this is
I think
federal.
that yes, we will have to do some things. For example, I can tell you we're going to need some hardening of things of some buildings over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's particular, and we need a bigger EOC. I mean, we've had. I mean, we're talking about a very small building. We really need a consolidated, almost like a consolidated dispatch where we have sheriff, fire, everybody in one spot. So right now it's all over the county. And so I think that we're going to need to look at that. The legislature is going to have to look at all of these counties for this. The other thing the legislature is going to need to do, I think, is put together, a hardening package for some of our institutions, like certainly North Florida College, for example. That college serves students in all of these affected counties. They need to have a roof that won't come in on the students, that they can shelter in the worst of a storm. So I really want to see a good roof, and I want to see a generator for that school. And they're probably not the only one. Certainly the hospitals, the rural hospitals, need to be built up and hardened and provided more infrastructure in all of these counties. Madison's hospital lost internet. They couldn't do things for a while like send images that they were able to take, but they couldn't send them to anybody to look at. So, things like that. It is a healthcare desert in a lot of these small rural counties. So we got to focus on those types of services we're talking basic governmental functioning that needs to take place. And I'm going to tell you, these guys really, all of the counties stood up and really did a tremendous job on a shoestring. But I think there's a lot the legislature needs to do. We poured in huge, necessary, and needed critical resources into Hurricane Ian areas, and I deeply appreciate that. I'd like to see the same level of commitment to the North Florida counties up here.
Well, thank you so much, Representative Allison Tant, for taking time out of your busy schedule, helping other people to join us and tell us what's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to A Deeper Dive with Dara Cam. Today, as part of our special post-Idalia episode, we have a special guest with us, Levy County Commissioner John Meeks. Commissioner Meeks is also the owner of an Ace Hardware store, independent owner of an Ace Hardware store. And so he is in a very unique position as someone who serves in the county. I don't believe that Idalia made landfall in Levy County. I think it made landfall in Taylor County, which is real close to you. But Cedar Key got hammered, and Cedar Key is in your county, and so is Yankeetown. So thank you for taking time. I know you're busy. If you could just give us a little insight into what happened in Levy County on August 30th.
Well, thank you very much for the very kind introduction, Ms. Dara. To start off with, I want everybody that's listening to know that we were blessed in Levy County. There was a reorganization, if you will, of that storm whenever it was to our west. And so the effects that we felt in Levy County were not nearly as devastating as were going to be predicted. We had a prediction of 15 foot of storm surge, when in actuality in Cedar Key we only received about 9 feet. And I think after the storm, once the storm reorganized, it picked up speed and it indeed did make landfall on our neighbors to the north. So although we did have a very major storm surge that made landfall, the wind speeds in Levy County were not nearly what were predicted. So we were blessed, I will say that, but we did receive a substantial amount of damage up exceeding millions of dollars in Cedar Key alone. The amount of debris that's going to have to be removed is 50 100,000 cubic feet of debris. They're predicting. Same thing for Yankeetown. Millions of dollars in damage to homes and businesses. So we didn't get the brunt of it, but we still felt the effects.
Cedar Key is a unique coastal fishing community and a tourist community. A friend of mine who lives in Sarasota, I live in Tallahassee, we used to make an annual trip to the Faraway Inn, which was about halfway between Sarasota and Tallahassee. And so we would make our little pilgrimage there and shop in the little artsy shops and eat plenty of seafood and watch the sunset. So I'm wondering, I haven't been down there in a couple of years, but it looked, first of all, you had Jim Cantori covering the storm from there, so you know you're in deep doo-doo when a hurricane's headed your way and Jim Cantori chooses you as the spot to stay in. So did that cause you any angst?
Yes, ma'am, it did. It certainly did. You're exactly right. Whenever Jim Cantori shows up, good things typically do not happen.
Right.
And unfortunately, the Faraway Inn, they sustained quite a bit of damage. They're one of the businesses that have been covered on the state and national news. A lot of the damage that was sustained there. But I will tell you about the folks in Cedar Key and the folks in Yankeetown. Man, they are very resilient people. I was down there on Thursday, the day after the storm. We were allowed in as government officials to do damage assessment and look and reassure the public that the aid was indeed on its way, that help would be coming. And the people were already back to work. The folks at the Faraway Inn, they were down there, cleaning up. The stuff on the bottom floor is what got damaged, and some of that was designed. They have blowout walls and things now in modern construction that allow for, whenever you do have a surge, rather than it take down the whole building, it blows out the walls, on the lower level, so that the rest of the structure remains standing. So we did see some substantial damage to places like the Faraway Inn and others, but the people were already there. The business owners and the community cleaning that stuff up. They don't want it, but we're prepared and understand what has to happen immediately after. So the impact in the community, is far reaching. There's a lot of, like you said, a lot of tourism there, but there's also a lot of tourism related businesses, charter boat captains, people who do guided tours, that also are going to feel the effect, as well as the businesses along the way. As you well know, Cedar Key is an island at the end of State Road 24. Cannot get there by car without going through another community in our beautiful county. So we miss out on some of that traffic while the recovery is taking place. So there will be an economic impact felt extremely in Cedar Key and Yankeetown, but there will also be an effect throughout all of Levy County.
And I'm wondering about the character of these regions, Steinhatchee, Yankeetown, Cedar Key. I'm lifelong Floridian, except for when I went off to college and ran away and lived in Wyoming. That's a whole nother story. But, these are very unique coastal and surrounding communities in Florida. Many people who live there, multi-generational families. They grow up there, they stay there. Are you concerned that this kind of a disaster is going to displace people and that it's going to change the vibe of the place?
Well, that's always a concern. Anytime you have an event like this happen, that the local people, who already are feeling the economic pressures because the property taxes are so high. They do live in a very valuable piece of real estate, and they have lived there a long time. But as property values go up around the state, Taxes go up. They're feeling the crunch from that. They feel the crunch from, a lot of folks aren't able to make their living on the water anymore.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of factors that have played into that. The net ban back in '96 displaced a lot of fishermen. We're very blessed in Cedar Key that we have the very vibrant clamming industry that has kind of filled that void. But just over time, with pressure coming from other sources of seafood, a lot of our local fishermen have been displaced. There's a lot of farm raised fish out there now on the market. The oyster industry has been under attack for many years. The collapse in Apalachicola has led to over harvesting in other areas. We're suffering from that. So there's not a thriving oyster industry like we've had in the past. So yes, it's been a ongoing decline of having that local flair as far as the residents who live there. Now, the thing that is unique about Cedar Key is it is almost like a miniature Key West, and the fact that they have a tourist population that pops up, especially on the weekends. A lot of folks come from out of town and they come to party and relax and enjoy the sunset and enjoy all the things that we have that we're so blessed with. I don't see that changing. A lot of those businesses that are on Dock Street and are down in the downtown area, they're rebuilding and they're coming back. So I think as far as the touristy side of it, I think we're going to be good. As far as local people being displaced, from their houses being destroyed or damaged beyond repair, and them not being able to afford to rebuild, time will tell. I don't see that happening. These folks, again, I will talk about, the native folks especially. They are resilient. I mean, we went through Hurricane 7 years ago. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but very similar effects as far as storm surge and damage, and literally 3 weeks after Hermine, you wouldn't know anything had happened in
Well,
Cedar
you
Key.
would have at my house, Commissioner, because in Tallahassee during Hermine, I had a tree come through the roof and it took out sort of the back wall, and that was in the middle of the night, and I was without power for over a week. In fact, I was without power longer than I probably needed to be because I didn't realize that the electric box on the outside of the house had gotten damaged, and so everybody else's power was back on and mine wasn't, and I grabbed one of the linemen that I saw, and that's how I found out what had happened to my house.
Yes,
So I had actually one of those pictures popped up on my iPhone yesterday that had a picture of then Governor Rick Scott came to my neighborhood because my neighborhood was so severely hit in Tallahassee during Hermine, and it had a picture of me and Governor Scott at my house with no power on. So I totally feel you about Hermine, and it doesn't seem like it was 7 years ago in terms of the anxiety that I felt when we were preparing for Idalia. It was as if it had happened yesterday. So I didn't realize that you guys had been hit so hard too, because I had no power for so long.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but
Yeah.
no, we definitely and even then, that's when I was a fairly newly elected commissioner. It was my first tenure as chairman, so I was involved in a lot of the decision making that went on prior to landfall or prior to the effects of Hermine being felt, and then was quickly involved in the recovery, and that's whenever I really understood. Again, I hate to keep using this term, but just how resilient the folks are in our coastal communities, because they're prepared. They don't want it, but they expect it, and they know what to do, and they get to work, and they quickly want to get life back to as normal as they can get.
And it is kind of like a way of life. It's not like it is a culture, and you don't just walk away from that. Although, with insurance, we'll have to see what kind of settlements people get with insurance with the recent changes to the insurance laws and property insurance being such a headache for people now. It'll be interesting to see. I feel like really this storm, other than the first day or so, has not gotten the kind of national coverage that Ian, for example, got. It kind of angers me. People are in the inland areas, complete devastation in Madison County, and I just feel like nobody, everybody's moved on already.
It's eerily similar to Matthew. With the fact of where it made landfall, the rural nature of the communities that were affected. Don't get me wrong. Every hurricane that makes landfall, every natural disaster that we incur in Florida affects everybody differently. But you make a very good point. The amount of coverage that went towards Hurricane Ian, but look at the population difference of the region that was hit. In the amount of assets that were destroyed, the building, the people that were involved, the amount of people. Again, this is this storm affected what is primarily a very rural area.
Yeah.
And we just unfortunately do not attract a lot of national attention.
Yeah.
It's sad, but it's just the nature of the beast. And I think that goes back to what makes the people in these regions, able to jump in and recover. Because you get in and you pull your boots up and you go to work, because you can't wait on somebody else to come do it for you. And that has been a way of life. That is a way of life in all of our rural communities with everything. We have to make do with what we have and make it work, because we're not going to get bailed out.
Commissioner Meeks and I have spoken many times. He is a huge advocate for rural communities. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have him on the show today. Let me ask you, as the owner of a hardware store, I guess it's kind of the terrible wonderful for you. There's a little bit of a windfall maybe, or, increased sales. How are you doing in terms of being able to get supplies to sell to folks, getting access, having things delivered and distributed? How is that a challenge?
It is. It's been a little bit of a challenge for me. It's not been terrible. We actually, so for example, with Ace Hardware, we got our truck out of sequence because they knew they weren't going to be able to put trucks on the road on Wednesday. Wednesday's our typical delivery day. So we got a delivery on Monday. So we had to go a little bit longer. The typical storm supplies, gas cans, batteries, rain suits, chainsaw, bar and lubricating oil, things of that nature, sold very quickly, and getting those replenished has been a little bit of we've had a little difficulty there,
right.
Simply because the warehouse runs out. I mean, so our Ace, as far as other things like lumber and building materials that don't typically come from our Ace warehouse, that come from outside vendors, the issues with the road closures in North Florida. A lot of these supplies come from, like lumber comes from Georgia. That's where the mills are that produce the pressure treated wood. They've had difficulty getting through some of those areas. And then, the uncertainty of Tuesday, Wednesday, and even into Thursday with people not having trucks on the road has created a delay. And it's kind of a ripple effect, if you will. One day being out of service creates 2 days of a backlog.
Right.
So 3 days of being out of service has created almost a week-long backlog, over a week-long backlog of getting stuff delivered. So, and then of course, as people rebuild, there's the demand goes up. So a higher demand, unfortunately, causes higher cost, and so there's that dilemma. every time a hurricane makes landfall in the state of Florida, the price of lumber goes up 10%, guaranteed.
Wow.
No matter who's affected, how much is affected, it just automatically happens. And unfortunately, those costs have to be passed along to the consumer. So, but
Well, that's unfortunate. I mean, that seems unfair in a way.
it is very unfair, especially whenever you're living in an area that was not affected at all.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, as far as, getting supplies like to our emergency operations center,
Mm-hmm.
the state of Florida DEM has done a fantastic job. They have gotten supplies to the places that's needed them, as far as we're concerned, very quickly. I can't speak for my colleagues in Madison or Taylor or Suwannee counties that were also affected, or even Dixie. But I know here in Levy County, there's been no hiccups as far as any sort of recovery supplies, MREs, water, tarps, things. Those things have been delivered in a very timely fashion, and we do appreciate that.
That's great. What do you think that you guys are going to need from the legislature in the upcoming session, if anything?
To be honest with you, Ms. Dara, I don't know that we're going to need anything relating to the storm in Levy County. I think by the time the session starts in January, we'll be back to business as usual.
That's terrific.
Now, again, one of the things that has stood out to me, and I'm speaking for other people, and I probably shouldn't do that, but in communities or in counties like Lafayette and Suwannee and Madison, those are inland counties, and they really don't prepare for the same sort of disasters, natural disasters that we do. Storm surge really isn't going to be an issue in Madison County, but typically they do have the effect of tornado action that is associated with a hurricane or tropical depression. So I think that they really have gotten hit. They got hit harder, no doubt. But I think that maybe they may have some needs forward from the legislature, to help get them back on their feet. As far as recovery money, debris removal, things of that nature. Well, I will brag on my people. We do my staff, my folks here in Levy County, they do a fantastic job. And I mentioned that last night at our meeting. I mentioned it on all the state calls and all the local calls. I knew we couldn't control the weather. We couldn't control what was going to happen, but I knew that we have one of the best teams, if not the best team in the state of Florida, that we would get back on our feet. And so we are blessed. So to answer your question in the very short version, I don't know that we need anything. We will need anything from the legislature.
Right.
They haven't already provided, with the funding that they give to the state, for disaster recovery.
Yeah.
But I can't speak for my neighbors to the north. I think they may need some assistance.
Well, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Good luck to you all down there in Levy County. And I'm going to have to make a point of coming back to take up my annual pilgrimage to Cedar Key again. I really, it is a special place, and have a lot of very fond memories of there.
Yes, ma'am. We'll come see us for sure. Like I say, I haven't been down there since Sunday, but I mean, at Sunday, other than the debris piles in places, it was hard to tell that anything had happened. I mean, people are really building back and putting things back in order.
Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Commissioner Meeks. We'll have to have you back on to talk about something a little more uplifting, although it was quite uplifting to hear about how people are banding together.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you for your time.
We have another special guest with us today as part of our follow-up to Hurricane Idalia. We are now lucky to be joined by Kaitlynn Culpepper, the Director of Community Relations for Tri-County Electric Cooperative. I think I got that right. How close was I?
That was perfect.
Thank you. And and the reason that we've got Kaitlynn with us today is because your co-op provides power to which counties?
We serve Madison, Jefferson, and Taylor County.
So you got a triple hit there, didn't you?
Yes, we did. The eye of the hurricane went right over and through our whole service territory.
Can you tell me how many folks you serve and how many lost power?
We serve 20,000 meters. We lost 20,000 meters. Our system was 100% out after the hurricane.
Wow, 100%.
Yes.
And rural areas, lots of trees down, not like you're going. I would imagine that there's a lot of space in between those meters. They're not piled up on top of each other.
That's correct. We average 6 meters a mile of service, and that is in comparison to your larger power companies that have an average of maybe 35 customers per mile. We've got about 6. We've got about 6, and that comes with challenges because of the amount of time it takes to rebuild the system, and then you're only getting a few people on, and that can be a challenge for us for sure.
So where do you live personally?
I live in Madison.
What happened with where you live and in your neighborhood?
We were fortunate in our neighborhood and our home. We had a lot of trees fall, but nothing on our house and nothing on the houses of those who live near us. We do live on a canopy road, a beautiful canopy road, and we were not able to get out of our neighborhood for a few days. I was able to get out and come to work shortly after the hurricane because one of our linemen actually drove through the woods and picked me up halfway. And I walked through the woods from my house through the woods, and he picked me up halfway and got me back out onto the highway and here to our office.
Wow.
We could get right to work.
How many folks I'm going to ask, and I think I know the answer, but how many folks are still without power now? We're recording this a week out.
We have about 3,000 without power right now. Those 3,000 people are people in the most catastrophically impacted areas and people who cannot safely receive electricity at this time. So if they had certain amounts of damage to their home or they lost their meter pole, weatherhead, different infrastructure that an electrician has to come out and repair before we can connect their electricity, or if they lost their home altogether and will not need to be restored until they rebuild or relocate, that number is included in that as well. And we have, for those who can safely receive electricity, and in those in the catastrophic areas, this Friday is their estimated restoration time. And we're still working across the system, but we are having to let those people know that it could be as long as Friday before they have electricity.
I was talking to a county commissioner from Levy County earlier today, and I was recollecting that during Hurricane Hermine, I had a tree come through my roof of my house here in Tallahassee, and I was without power for over a week. So I think it's pretty spectacular that you're able to, you're estimating that you'll have power restored to everyone in your community within, say, 10 days. Tell me, what was it like? Did you evacuate? Were you there during Idalia?
We were there. Yes, my family. I have 3 small children and my husband and our 2 dogs and our cat, and we were all there and waited it out inside of our home. So we were fortunate not to have any damage to our home, and we were safe throughout the entire time. But it was scary to watch and go through that and be connected. Our Taylor County area is the coast of Florida, right there in the Gulf, and I get all of their emergency alerts as well,
Right.
because of my position here, and hearing it and seeing it come in real time was very scary and very unsettling, knowing that what they were facing with, at that point, it had turned into a category 4 and was making landfall early that morning. And it was hard to know that that was happening to our people, our
Yeah.
neighbors, our friends, and we're a small community. We only serve 20,000 meters, which means the likelihood that we know the person we serve between our employees is extremely high, and it has an emotional toll on you as well. For us, it's not just business, it's our people, and that's been hard.
Yeah. What do you think is going to be the biggest challenges moving forward for your community and for the co-op?
For the community, is still going to be the cleanup. The amount of debris, as far as trees and material from people's homes and roofs and things like that, rebuilding those things and cleaning up all of that is going to be a continuous challenge for a while. Our employees, along with hundreds of others who have been working through this restoration effort, whether it's from the emergency management side, hospitals, there are tons of people who haven't even gotten around to cleaning up yet. And that will take a while. It will just take a while before you don't see the impact that it had on our area.
Yeah, I was wondering if you have concerns about, this is a fiscally constrained area of the state, very not densely populated, very has a culture. Lots of people who grew up there, lived there, multi-generational families living there, wondering if you think there's if there's a concern about maybe a change in the kind of people who will be able to afford to rebuild on the coast. It is Florida. It is waterfront property. It might be rural, and not many people might know about it. But a lot of people have lived there for many generations. So I'm wondering if there's a concern about what this community will look like on the other side of all this.
Fortunately, I say fortunately, we were also directly impacted by Hurricane Hermine and Hurricane Irma. With that, our community was better prepared for this. We had no fatalities throughout the 3 counties that we serve, which is amazing because we were all emotionally prepared for that. We had no fatalities. The coast actually weathered really well in comparison to what we were expecting, because they've already had to rebuild twice, and they've already had to harden their homes and lift their homes and implement new building codes. All of those things they've already had to do because of the past 2 hurricanes that were fairly recently.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, we all fared very well in comparison to what we were expecting. I think that the people who choose to live here and choose to live on the coast in that area, they grew up there, they want to be there, they love it, and they're going to do whatever they have to do. And they know what they're faced with, and they're better now at preparing for that. And that proved to be effective in this case, because the outcome was so much better than what we expected. And it's because of all that preparation that people have done over the years, rebuilding from the other 2 hurricanes.
How did your folks who work for you fare? Do you have any stories you can swap with us? Tell us what kind of storm damage your workers encountered?
As a majority, our employees fared well as far as their homes are concerned. There was a good bit of work that went into clearing the roads enough for our employees to get here. Many of our employees grabbed the nearest chainsaw and cut their way out of their roads and their neighborhoods to get here, to get to work, to start, because they knew our mission, and that was to get power back on to our members as fast as possible. We had one employee who did lose his home when a tree fell through the middle of their home. They were not there, thank goodness. But when they went back to check on their home, assess the damage, a neighbor was able to help them cut into the home. And our employee asked him to do that so that he could go in there and get his work shirts and get in his truck and come to work. And that's exactly what he did. And that is a testament to all of our employees. Everyone has stepped up, and our community, but people stepped up, put their problems aside, and got to work for our members. And it's as hard as that has been for their family. It's amazing to see his dedication, and he was obviously not required to be here during that time if he needed to do that, but he chose to get right to work, and it's amazing to see that come out in people during a very difficult time for themselves. It's
great to hear a story about people being their best selves at a time of serious and very catastrophic, literally catastrophic challenge. Well, what's the message that you want to get out to the world about your community and Taylor County, Madison County, Jefferson County, post Idalia? What's at the top of your wish list, and what do you want to say to all the folks who are listening?
The top of the wish list is that we get everyone's power back on. Yeah. Obviously, it's extremely frustrating to not have power, and it can create a lot of problems for people with health issues or with small children, and people need their electricity, and we are working so hard to get that back on for everyone. The message is that we can take anything a hurricane throws at us, and we're going to figure it out, and we're going to, from the co-op's perspective, we're going to get our people back on as quickly as possible. From the community perspective, when these things happen, every time they've happened, the people in our community step up in amazing ways, and people have coordinated resources to come in, showers, bathrooms, laundry services, food distribution, all over the place, which has helped our members significantly while we're out there helping get them their electricity back. And the community does that just to serve their neighbor.
Well, Kaitlynn Culpepper, thank you so much for joining us. It was short and sweet, and we know that you're busy restoring power to all the folks in the Big Bend area. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you very much.
A Deeper Dive with Dara is a podcast by City and State Florida, hosted by Dara Cam, produced by Ryan Daly, and music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC, and performed by Ryan Daly and Danny Reyes.